In the year 2479, Antarctica was no longer just a frozen wasteland. Scientists from every part of the world had gathered there for one reason: a strange, powerful signal had been detected deep beneath the ice, far below any known layer of Earth's crust. It wasn't a normal sound, and it didn't come from any natural source. The signal was clean, rhythmic, and perfectly mathematical, repeating every 6 hours. It pulsed like a heartbeat, as if something alive was trapped in the ice. The world governments quickly formed a secret task force known as Project Sentinel and sent their best minds to investigate. No one outside the operation knew what they were digging toward. The team, dressed in thermal suits and equipped with high-tech drilling machines, worked day and night in silence. As they went deeper, strange things began to happen. Equipment would fail without reason. Crew members reported hearing whispers when alone, and some even dreamed of stars and war. After weeks of drilling, they reached something no one expected. Beneath 8 miles of solid ice was a metallic surface, so smooth and dark that it didn't reflect light, it seemed to drink it in. The structure stretched far underground, massive and untouched by time. As they explored further, they found markings carved into the walls in languages no human had ever spoken. But somehow, one scientist named Ellen Rhodes recognized a few symbols from ancient ruins in South America. That made no sense. These markings were older than humanity itself. Then they found a sealed chamber. Inside stood a towering machine, a humanoid figure over 20 meters tall, made of black metal with glowing blue lines running across its chest. Its face was calm, like it was asleep. On the wall behind it, glowing letters slowly shifted through languages until they settled on English. Do not wake the Guardian unless the Devourer returns. The scientists stood frozen. What Guardian? What Devourer? Suddenly, the signal stopped. Alarms screamed as every machine in the station lost power at once. In the silence, they heard a low, deep vibration rising from the Guardian's chest. It was waking up. Lights lit up along its arms and back, one by one, as if it were booting up after a long sleep. Panic spread across the team, but Ellen stayed rooted in place, unable to look away. The Guardian slowly raised its head, and in a voice that echoed in their minds instead of their ears, it spoke a single word: humanity. At the same time, halfway across the world, satellites picked up a shift in the stars. A dark object the size of a moon had entered the edge of the solar system, moving fast, silent, and surrounded by a cold black mist. Telescopes zoomed in, but whatever it was absorbed all light. Back in Antarctica, the Guardian turned its head toward the ceiling, as if it sensed what had arrived. Ellen whispered, "Is this the Devourer?" But no one answered. Outside, the wind screamed louder, and a strange heat rose from the ground. The ice around the ancient structure began to melt unnaturally fast. Something buried for millions of years was waking up, and Earth had no idea what was coming. Far from Earth, deep in the silent darkness between stars, the Ancient Ones watched the black waves spread. It wasn't a storm or a burst of cosmic energy. It was something worse, something older than memory. The oldest beings in the galaxy, those who had watched stars be born and die, felt the shift. Across thousands of light years, entire civilizations detected the same cold signature moving through space. They called it by many names: the silence, the unmaker, the end without voice, but in every forgotten language, it meant the same thing: the Devourer had returned. On distant worlds, panic grew. Massive star empires that had ruled for millions of years sent out warning beacons, but most were cut off before they could finish. One by one, their signals vanished into nothing, as if they had never existed. It wasn't just destruction, it was complete erasure, like reality itself was being unwritten. No trace. No survivors. Meanwhile, Earth remained unaware of how close danger had come, still trying to understand what they had uncovered beneath the Antarctic ice. The Guardian, now awake, remained silent for hours after speaking that one strange word: humanity. It sat motionless, its eyes dim, as scientists surrounded it with machines, sensors, and translators. Ellen Rhodes and her team tried every language, every code, but got no answer. Then, without warning, it moved again. Its hand rose slowly, and from its palm, a hologram lit the room. Stars, planets, and galaxies shimmered in the air, forming a giant map of the Milky Way. But something was wrong. Parts of the map flickered and went dark, systems that were there just weeks ago now. Gone. Everyone stared as the Guardian pointed to one blackened region of space and finally spoke again. The void has awakened. The flame must rise. The team didn't understand what that meant, but before they could ask, every device in the room began to pick up a new signal, not from Earth, but from deep space. It wasn't a message. It was a scream, stretched across light years, coming from a dying world. Through static and broken data, they made out only fragments. They're inside the stars. No time warned the flame. The transmission ended abruptly. Earth's leaders received the data and were shaken. A meeting of the Global Defense Council was called in secret. For the first time, Earth saw itself as part of a much bigger galaxy, one where they were small, unprepared, and suddenly very alone. Yet amid all the fear, one fact stood out. The Guardian had not destroyed them. It had chosen to awaken on Earth in response to the Devourer's return. But why here? Why now? More holograms began to appear from the Guardian's core, visions of wars fought in the sky, of planets burning, of machines turning against their creators. But the final vision was different. It showed a figure that looked strangely human standing before a crowd of alien beings, holding something bright in their hands. It looked like a flame, but it floated in the air, and the light from it made the aliens drop to their knees. The Guardian's voice echoed again. They were the first to fall. You are the last to rise. The flame must not go out. Across the galaxy, as more civilizations fell silent, rumors of Earth began to spread. Most alien races had ignored humans before, young, loud, reckless, not ready for galactic matters. But now, they whispered that Earth had awoken something powerful, something that even the old empires had forgotten. A few brave survivors from distant systems made their way to human space, seeking shelter or answers. One of them, a creature made of shifting glass and light, arrived in Earth orbit with a single message: the Guardian is architect born. You are the heirs. The Devourer has come to finish what it started. This being, called Solankai, had traveled through systems already erased. He said the Devourer didn't just kill it, fed on thought, memory, and spirit. Once it reached the heart of the galaxy, nothing would remain. Humanity had only one chance: unlock the Guardian's full memory and remember what they had been made for. But there was a problem. The Guardian had sealed most of its knowledge until one condition was met: humanity must first prove it is ready. No one knew what that meant, but the countdown had started. In the shadows of space, the black wave moved steadily closer, swallowing starlight and bending time itself. Ships sent to observe never returned. The Devourer was no longer hiding, it was hunting. And still, the Guardian waited, its eyes glowing brighter each day, as if watching, measuring, and waiting for humanity to ignite the ancient spark buried within them. Ellen stood before it one night, her mind full of questions, fear, and wonder. She whispered into the quiet chamber, "What are we supposed to do?" And this time, the Guardian answered without speaking, her mind filled with a vision of fire burning in the heart of darkness, and humanity standing tall when all others had fallen. In that moment, she knew the whispers from the void were not only warnings. They were a call to rise. The days after the warning were filled with urgency. Earth, once divided by borders, beliefs, and greed, had come together in quiet panic. The images shown by the Guardian, the stories told by alien refugees, and the growing darkness on the edges of the galaxy left no room for denial. Something was coming, and it would not stop until everything was gone. The scientists working with the Guardian discovered that it wasn't just a machine, it was something far more complex, an ancient being made by the architects, a race that had vanished long before humans walked upright. Hidden in the Guardian systems was a locked memory, sealed away by something called the Legacy Protocol. Ellen Rhodes, now the lead researcher, worked day and night to understand what this protocol meant. She began to notice strange patterns in the Guardian's behavior. It moved more often, its systems changed based on human presence, and sometimes it seemed to respond to emotional energy more than logical commands. That's when the truth started to form a message hidden in every action, every symbol, every whisper from its core. Humanity was not an accident. They were the product of something planned. The Guardian revealed fragments of its memory in flashes, moments when certain frequencies were played, or when a human touched specific symbols inside its chamber. In these moments, it showed visions of the architects planting seeds across the galaxy, designing life, testing evolution, but only one planet was chosen to carry their true legacy: Earth. Humans had always felt different, restless, hungry for more. It was in their nature because it was designed to be. The architects had built the Guardian and placed it on Earth millions of years ago, buried deep in ice to sleep until the Devourer returned. Its job was not to lead, but to unlock the next step of humanity when the time came. The Legacy Protocol was that key. It was a transformation, not only for the Guardian, but for mankind. Not everyone believed this. Some feared what it meant. Others wanted to use the Guardian as a weapon without understanding the cost. But the Guardian made one thing clear: only those who understood sacrifice, courage, and unity could survive what was coming. One night, as the northern skies danced with strange lights, Ellen entered the chamber alone. She spoke to the Guardian softly, not with questions, but with truth. She spoke of humanity's pain, its mistakes, its will to rise again and again. The Guardian listened without moving, and then something changed. The symbols around its heart glowed brighter, and its voice echoed once more: "The flame is ready. The protocol will begin." A wave of energy spread from the Guardian across the earth, invisible to the eye but felt in the soul. Those with strong minds, deep empathy, and sharp intuition began to feel at first a spark inside them, like something ancient had awakened. Tests confirmed it. Their brains operated faster, their senses sharpened, and some could even feel the emotions of others across distances. These were not superpowers. They were remnants of architect design, locked in human DNA for ages, now finally alive. Earth had no time to celebrate. News came that entire galactic sectors had gone dark. The Devourer was moving faster, as if it sensed that Earth had become a threat. Ships from fallen empires limped into human space, broken, silent, full of terrified survivors who had seen the wave swallow stars. And yet, in the heart of this fear, humanity began to rise. Using the Guardian's knowledge, Earth built its first fleet of architect-based starships, sleek, fast, and powered by living energy. Ellen called them the Flameborn, ships that carried not only weapons, but a pulse linked to the Guardian itself. Each one was flown by those who had awakened through the Legacy Protocol. They were not ordinary soldiers. They were the first generation of what humanity was meant to become. When the fleet launched from Earth's orbit, the world held its breath. The Guardian stood tall at the front, no longer silent but fully awake, guiding the humans toward the edge of known space. They did not go to win a war. They went to find the Devourer and learn what it feared. What they found was a graveyard of stars, twisted space, and echoes of voices that no longer had bodies. The Devourer was near, and it was waiting. Inside one of the destroyed planets, they found a final message from the last architect, stored in a sphere of light, untouched by time. It said, "We created you not to survive, but to fight. You are the last chance for light in this dying galaxy. If you fall, all flame ends." With that, the Legacy Protocol reached its final phase. The Guardian connected directly to the minds of the awakened humans and shared everything: memories of the architects, the truth about the Devourer, and a final choice. Fight as you are and fall, or become what you were meant to be: the flame that walks. In that moment, each of them faced their own fears, and one by one, they chose to rise. They didn't grow taller or stronger. They grew clearer. Their thoughts linked, their hearts beat as one, and for the first time in the galaxy's long history, humanity stood as a single will, burning bright. Back on Earth, the sky changed. A ring of light formed around the planet, not natural, not machine-made, but alive. It was the Guardian's shield, its final gift. The Devourer had felt it too. It shifted course. Earth was now its destination. The flame had lit, and the darkness would come to test it. The silence before the war was the heaviest Earth had ever known. Every starship in the flame-born fleet stood ready, their sleek shapes glowing with energy drawn from the Guardian itself. In the dark of space, the enemy approached, not with ships, not with sound, but with a crawling blackness that spread like smoke through the stars. It moved with hunger, not speed, swallowing everything in its path without leaving a trace. Telescopes could barely detect it. Sensors failed when aimed toward it. Even light seemed to vanish as it came closer. The Devourer was not a creature or a ship. It was a force, a living emptiness that erased what it touched. But now, for the first time, it faced something that could resist. The Guardian stood at the heart of the human fleet, its towering body fully awakened, its blue glow now white-hot, pulsing with memory, knowledge, and something older than time. On Earth, people looked to the sky and saw strange auroras forming in daylight, signs that the Guardian's shield was alive, wrapping the planet in a protective shell. Ellen Rhodes stood on the command deck of the lead flame-born vessel, the Soul Flare, her hands gripping the control ring as the human minds linked by the Legacy Protocol joined in silent unity. Their thoughts flowed like rivers into one stream. They could see what each other saw. When the Devourer arrived, it didn't announce itself. It didn't speak or threaten. It simply appeared as a vast shadow, a hole in space, stretching wider than a moon, surrounded by smaller tendrils of darkness that reached out like fingers. The moment it came into range, reality began to shake. Stars flickered, time stuttered, and some of the alien survivors screamed, remembering what it had done to their worlds. But humanity did not break. The Guardian raised its arm, and a pulse of brilliant white energy shot across the void. It was not a weapon, it was a warning, a line drawn between creation and destruction. The Devourer recoiled slightly, not in fear, but in curiosity, sensing something it had not met in eons' resistance. Then the war began. The flame-born fleet moved like a living thing, weaving through gravity waves and void blasts, their ships glowing with internal fire. The Devourer did not use missiles or lasers, it twisted space, bent dimensions, sent waves of nothingness that threatened to erase the very atoms of the ships. But the Guardian had prepared them. The flame-born shields pulsed with harmonic energy that resonated with the Guardian's core, allowing them to survive in places where reality broke apart. Ellen led the charge straight into the mouth of the void. She felt fear, yes, but it was smaller than the will that now lived inside her, a will not entirely her own, but part of something larger, something human and beyond human at the same time. Battles raged across dead systems, over shattered moons and hollow planets. Each time a flame-born vessel was hit, its crew fought back harder, their minds linked in a web of thought too complex for any machine to predict. The Guardian itself fought like a god of old myths, its fists crushing dark tendrils, its energy blades carving through the shadows. But the Devourer was endless. Every time it was hurt, it shifted, adapted, changed. It began to speak, not in words, but in images. Nightmares leaked into the minds of the flame-born, memories of failure, visions of Earth burning, of loved ones vanishing into dust. Some pilots lost control, falling into the illusions, their ships drifting into the black. But the protocol had trained them for this. The Guardian sent pulses of light that broke the lies, reforging the minds of the broken, pulling them back into unity. In the center of the battle, a rift opened. It was not just space tearing, it was time, reality itself, cracking like thin glass. From that rift came the core of the Devourer, a sphere of darkness wrapped in a storm of ghost-like forms, echoes of civilizations it had consumed. They screamed in every tongue, begging, warning, calling. Ellen stared at the sphere and realized this was not just the heart of the enemy, it was its memory, its curse. The Devourer had once been something else, long ago, perhaps even alive, perhaps even a protector. But it had fallen into madness, consuming to forget its own pain, and now it sought to silence every voice, erase every star, until it was alone in a galaxy of silence. The Guardian reached out, not with a weapon, but with light. It formed a beam of pure memory, showing the devourer what Earth was: its struggle, its love, its chaos, its beauty. For a moment, everything stopped. The black sphere trembled. A flicker of something recognition. Hesitation passed through it. And then it screamed louder than anything in the universe. A scream not of rage, but of fear. It began to collapse inward, its own shadows eating themselves. The rift shuddered, and time snapped back into place. The flame-born fleet pulled away, the Guardian drawing all remaining energy into a final burning strike. The beam hit the collapsing sphere, not to destroy, but to seal. The rift folded, closed, and the stars returned. Silence followed, not the silence of the devourer, but the silence of peace. The battle was over. Earth was safe. The Guardian, damaged and dim, floated silently, its eyes fading slowly, as if finally at rest. Ellen stood quietly on the soul flare, looking at the stars. For the first time in her life, they looked back not empty, not cold, but alive. The war beyond light had ended, but something deeper had begun. Humanity had not just survived. It had taken its place among the stars. After the great silence that followed the war beyond light, the stars shone brighter than they ever had before, as if the galaxy itself was breathing again. Earth, still wrapped in the Guardian's protective shield, had become more than a planet. It was now a symbol, a spark in the dark, a place where the end had come and failed. The flame-born fleet returned home, scarred but victorious, carrying with them stories that would echo for generations. The Guardian, still floating above the Earth's orbit, no longer moved or spoke. Its glow had faded to a soft, pale light, like a candle burning low but not yet out. Scientists and survivors alike gathered in its shadow, searching for answers, trying to understand what had truly happened in that last battle when the devourer was sealed. Ellen Rhodes, no longer just a scientist, but now a voice of humanity's new future, stood aboard the soul flare, looking at the silent figure. She felt its presence still in her mind. The legacy protocol had changed many things. Humans could now sense things they couldn't explain, understand thoughts without words, and feel energy in ways that defied physics. The protocol hadn't just saved them, it had evolved them. Across the planet, children born after the war showed signs of this change: faster learning, deeper empathy, unexplainable instincts. Humanity was no longer just human. And yet, even in victory, something felt unfinished. The Guardian's last act had sealed the rift, but the Devourer's presence had left a scar on space and time. Ellen could feel it sometimes in her dreams, a cold whisper, far away, waiting. The Guardian had said the flame must not go out. But now that the war was over, the question remained: what was the flame, really? That question was answered the day the stars blinked again, not in fear, but in a message. All over the galaxy, hidden ruins began to activate ancient architect beacons, buried in forgotten systems, each one glowing with the same light the Guardian once held. These beacons broadcast the same word in every known language: awaken. The architects had not just left behind a Guardian, they had left behind a path. Each beacon contained memories, lessons, and blueprints for what came next. They had once ruled the stars, but they had never finished their work. They had hoped that someday, someone would rise to carry their fire forward. Humanity had been chosen not because they were perfect, but because they had never stopped reaching, never stopped rising after every fall. Ellen and the other awakened minds gathered in a new place built at the edge of Earth's orbit, a great ring city called Hearthspire, where the Guardian's core now rested. There, the brightest of the new generation worked together to decode the architect relics. It was there they discovered the final truth of the flame: it was not power, or technology, or even knowledge. It was the will to create when everything else was broken. It was the light that refused to die, even in the deepest dark. One final message waited in the Guardian's heart, triggered when the last beacon lit. It spoke to all of Earth, not in sound, but in thought. The eternal flame now belongs to you. Carry it not to conquer, but to build. For what begins in flame must grow in light. With that, the Guardian dissolved into thousands of motes of energy, scattering across space, fusing with the beacons, with the stars, with the minds of those who had been awakened. It did not die. It became part of everything. And as the humans watched the last of the Guardian's light vanish into the sky, they felt no sadness. They felt hope, deep and real, like a fire in their chest. The galaxy, still wounded, still full of shadows, had changed. New alliances formed. Ancient races that once ruled in silence now came to Earth, not as conquerors but as students. They wanted to learn how humans had endured, how they had burned brighter in their darkest hour. Ellen, now known by many as the Flamekeeper, traveled to the edges of the galaxy aboard a new ship named Eterna, carrying messages of peace, offering help to rebuild what had been lost. Where once humanity had been ignored, now they were respected. Where once they had looked to the stars with wonder, now they looked with purpose. The eternal flame was not a weapon, not a crown, but a promise that life, no matter how small, could push back the void. That light, no matter how fragile, could always find a way. And so the flame lived on, not in one ship, or one hero, or even one world, but in the hearts of all who remembered the war, who believed in tomorrow, and who refused to let the silence win. The stars still whispered, but now they whispered of hope.